All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. And we're going to have another fresh perspective conversation. And it's going to be, I'm actually really excited about this one. I know I say that every time, but I really mean it every single time. And this conversation is going to be quite enlightening, quite educational, maybe even a little bit controversial. But before we get into everything, I want to remind you to share this. You got to share this so that other people can listen to this brilliance that we're about to bring to the table. And also subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, what's wrong with you? Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you'll be updated whenever I upload a new episode. So also check out my Substack, Chasing Liberty. It's at libertychasers.com, or you can just go on Substack and look for Chasing Liberty, doing a lot of cool stuff over there, talking about local government corruption, all of the favorite liberty-focused type stuff. And become a subscriber. That helps me a lot too. Really appreciate it. So without further ado, first, before we get into everything, I'm going to bring on the lovely, the beautiful, the ravishing, Miss Doni The Don.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Yeah, so this is going to be good because I think this is your first time co-hosting one of my shows with me. So I think this will be great. And also, without further ado, I'm going to bring on the man, the myth, the legend, my good friend, Mr. Drew Cook. How you doing, brother?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me on, man. I know that this was a long time coming. I know they had to keep rescheduling, but I'm very grateful to be here.
I'm grateful that you're here. We have been trying to set this up for a while and keep getting snags, but now we're here. So now you can't go anywhere. But we're going to be talking about harm reduction. Now, this is a controversial topic, especially among conservative right-wing circles, especially because of the whole drug issue that we've had in the country, and there's always been a debate over the war on drugs. But this is a different approach that most people, especially on the right, associate with the left. But before we get into harm reduction and drug addiction or addiction in general, Drew, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a professional screw up. That's the only way that I know how to state it. When you have a kid, you bring them into the world, you have hopes and dreams and aspirations, all of that list that my parents had, I didn't do any of those. I did the opposite of all of those line items. I was in trouble a lot. I will tell you, I just could not find my place in the world, among my peers, among anybody. I lacked anything in the way of a social nuance. I couldn't pick up on it. I didn't understand it. And so I struggled a lot, man, for my earlier years. And truth be told, I found narcotics and they saved me from a lot of that. It's weird, man. They certainly became an instrument that I utilized for my own self-destruction many times over. However, they were also the appropriate medium for me to pick up on a sense of humor, on how to tell inflection and tone, and how that translates into a social setting, and how to communicate with other people. But that's just kind of a real quick rundown. Essentially, I found drugs. They were a great time. I still advocate heavily for them. I think they're amazing. They're just not for me. And, in a lot of instances, it was fun for me until it wasn't. And so I struggled for a great number of years to find recovery and to find, what is my relationship with these substances? What do I need to do in order to thrive and be, like the other people around me? I've been to inpatient treatment 20 times. The food is really good. I don't know what to tell you. They had a great salad bar. I just had to keep going back, man. They had the sunflower kernels, that's what, I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, we're with it. But
Jason's jelly, you can the sunflowers in the salad. That's good stuff.
Absolutely, man. But yeah, that's in a nutshell is my background. And politically, I wasn't paying attention for a lot of years. I was too busy getting high, doing that. By the time I started paying attention to politics, I'd picked up a couple of nonviolent felony convictions. And this prevented, and, I bought a house by myself, on my own. I broke my back, like, to build myself up and get myself out of the position that I was in. And I found myself paying way too much in taxes and not being given a voice or a vote on how those get utilized. New bond issues would pop up in the neighborhood. And since I was a felon, I wasn't able to go to the ballot box, with my opinion. And that made me mad. That made me pretty upset. And that's how I kind of found my way into libertarianism and all the things.
So here's my question. Donnie, if you have something that you would ask, just chime in whenever you want. But I wanted to have you, Drew, explain what is harm reduction? Because most people don't know what that is. How would you explain this concept to somebody who's hearing it for the first time?
So, for the first time, if you were hearing about it, I would say there is your favorite local bar, right? You go to that bar, you sit down, you have yourself a few drinks. If you have too much, that bartender knows you, and they're going to say, "Hey, let's call you a cab. Let's get you home safe and sound," right? That maybe give you a glass of water, maybe make sure that you're okay. That bar and that setting is harm reduction, and that is a supervised consumption site wrapped into one. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's socially acceptable. It's what we have all come to know as being, this is the standard. That is harm reduction and syringe service programs for individuals who utilize illicit narcotics, right? So That's what we do. So here in Oklahoma, I can tell you that there is a prescription requirement to be able to purchase sterile syringes, even on Amazon. Like it is very difficult to be able to get new equipment without a prescription from a doctor. So as a result, Oklahoma ranks highest in the nation for hepatitis C mortality.
Oh, wow.
We are being ravished. It is a communicable disease that is spread very easily, not just through sharing syringes, but also like the cookers that people utilize to mix their substance into and then draw up, through a cotton. Oftentimes people will share that, and hepatitis C, from a used syringe, it just spreads. So while that is a component, just at the base level, the supplies, we also fill in the gaps for education. A lot of people don't know the actual science behind these narcotics. So like for me personally, I came from the age where DARE was the standard, and that was an officer telling me that marijuana and heroin were equally destructive. And when I found out that was a lie, I just applied that to every substance that was out there. And there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of things that we could be educating each other on and help avoid some of the pitfalls and dangers, especially in this marketplace. But it's a lot of words to say. I hand out them syringes and meth pipes like you wouldn't believe. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Okay. So what are you doing? Are you been going to the Capitol? Have you been trying to introduce some kind of bills so they can make it easier for people to acquire these things? What has your experience been at the Oklahoma Capitol? Jeff and I've actually been there this past year, but for a different reason. What are your thoughts on your representatives now?
So admittedly, like we are in about the 1.5 year mark as an organization. Mm-hmm. I often
what's the name of the organization, by the way?
Oh, it's SHRED the Stigma.
Okay.
SHRED the Stigma. SHRED. If you're a nonprofit, you have to have an acronym. That's in the Constitution of the United States. And so SHRED stands for Safety, Harm Reduction, Education, and Delivery. That is, I love our little name. But
I like it too.
So for pretty much the entire time, our marketing has been directly geared at people who use drugs. There is a lot of presentations that I'll do in front of organizations, and they'll be like, "We've never heard of you." And I'm like, because I wasn't marketing to you. I was never trying to get in front of you. I got in front of my intended audience. I guarantee it. So we're now building outwards. We're now getting into the broader community. And we've also kind of tapped a couple of in-house volunteers who are really good at advocacy. And so we're going to start approaching the legislature. As far as bills go, so we operate under Oklahoma Senate Bill 511, and that codifies harm reduction, syringe service programs as a whole, kind of lists expectations and provides immunity for us. The bad thing is that there is a sunset clause in 2026 with this legislation. So we're kind of in this race against the clock, to make sure that we're documenting the outcomes that they're going to want to see and make sure that we are becoming of service to the broader community. Right. But that's kind of the priority number one. And then priority number two for us is Oklahoma's Good Samaritan laws are not great. As an example, there was a couple of people who were experiencing homelessness. They were using fentanyl together behind a local gas station. One of them overdosed. Their buddy called 911 to get help. Immediately called 911.
Okay.
IMSA showed up. The person passed away, and the district attorney charged the living person with murder one.
Wow.
And the thing is that murder one won't stick, and they know that, but they know that this person doesn't have anything in the way of resources or legal counsel, and they'll get them to plea down. But this person's going to spend at least a decade in prison.
Does he have an attorney or no?
As far as I know, it's a public defender, and due to the outcry because of these charges, they're really trying to get him in a treatment court. And then there's another thing that I'm like, I know that we like to hold up these treatment courts as like the gold standard, but they're not. They're really, really not. They do some good. Don't get me wrong, but man, it's sad. It's just sad all the way around. That's just all there is to it.
Is his court date coming up soon?
That I don't know. I cannot tell you with confidence.
If you could keep us posted on that, that'd be helpful. Or maybe we have people go to court all the time with my industry. So maybe there might be something we can do to help.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And I would definitely let you know. I was fortunate to work for a local diversion program, nonprofit, and I've been talking to them, for a little bit. And so they're keeping an eye on this person's case. The problem is that there's two different treatment courts here in Oklahoma County. One of them is mental health court, which does not get anywhere near the funding that it needs in order to operate, appropriately. And then there's drug court, which is a catch-all. That is where everybody gets funneled into. And if we're being honest, it's just a moneymaker. That's all it is. It is a money-generating treatment court, and I think that they're going to try to put them in there. And I don't know. We'll see.
I feel like we can do just a whole episode just on that alone. Because
I could drop bombs. I mean, I am full of rage with a lot of this stuff. There is nothing worse than somebody who was like pretending to be altruistic and like, oh, I'm here for you, but in reality, what you're doing is you're calf roping them into a very specific niche, right? They have to find a job that's going to allow them to take off to UA whenever. They got to pay for those UAs. They got to pay for these counseling classes. What if they don't need any of that?
Right.
What, you're missing the whole point. You cannot teach. You cannot force the surrender necessary to make a very intimate personal change in your life. You can only force compliance. And there is a stark difference in between compliance
huge difference
and surrender. I can tell you that like you could beat me as many people have. You can throw me in a cage. You can do any number of things, but until I want to stop and until I make that decision for me, it ain't going to change, but anyway, so, let me take a breath because I get fired up on that.
Yeah, no, that's fine because we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. So, I mean, we'll probably get fired up again, but I wanted to find out. So, can you kind of walk us through what a day in your life looks like when you're on the front lines and doing harm reduction, like the process and all that?
Yeah. So, okay, where do I start? This, like I told y'all, I've been to treatment 20 times. I'm an individual who failure is something that is intimate to me. Like, I am familiar with failure. I am also familiar with that desperation that comes and just going on this feedback loop of like, I don't have a house, I don't have resources, but I can get high and that makes it okay for today, right? And you get stuck in that for long enough and it just becomes a way of life, and you find other people doing the same. And then not only is it a way of life, but it's the new normal, like this is your reality. So for me, whenever we make deliveries, whenever I'm meeting our participants, I'm delivering a harm reduction kit to a version of myself every single time.
This is in like a certain area of the city.
We go, Oklahoma City covers like the central part of the map, right? Mm-hmm. It is way too big. Anyway, it's insanely big. I did not know when we started this, and I said, I will deliver to anywhere in Oklahoma City, that I was telling a big lie, because we will not. Like it is crazy large, but we touch the metro area and then any municipality that touches that, right? So our catchment area is pretty large. I'm sorry that my voice is going out. We had the fundraiser and all of that.
I know you've been talking a lot. I've been seeing you do all those presentations.
Yeah. So what we've done to kind of make it easier on us is we've broken down the catchment area into two sections. We do north on Mondays. We do south on Wednesdays, and then Friday it's citywide. We go anywhere. But yeah, we typically keep drivers within the same zip codes, that way they can formulate relationships. That way there's that constant contact. They're seeing a familiar face. It works out for everybody that way. But, so yeah, to answer your question, that's the area that we deliver into. But whenever I personally am delivering a kit, it's like there's so much identification that's there. Regardless of the emotions that the individual is feeling, it's like, I know where you're at. Right. And I was there so many times and being judged and being made to feel less than, that I started to wear that label of junkie and failure as a badge of honor. Like I turned that into something that I could be personally proud of. Like if I couldn't be somebody that fit into your mold that you had, I picked out for me in society, I'm just going to be a walking drug Wikipedia. I'm going to be able to tell you how to do all of the things, because that's something that I could take interest in. And it's like, that used to get me put in jail. And now it's like, I got a state contract for it. Like, I don't understand how that happened, but here we are.
Who is judging you? The people you're helping or people outside of that?
People like back then, it was literally society at large. Like this was during a very chaotic period of my life too. Like I was a character is the only way that I know how to describe it. Right. So like I was the type of drug user who I would try to rap battle people in World of Warcraft after being up for 72 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like weirdo stuff like that. I would walk in Walmart. There was one time in particular, I walked in Walmart at 3 a.m. to try to get some cardboard boxes, because they stocked the shelves because we were moving, and everybody was staring at me real crazy. And I'm like getting real hostile. And I get out to the car and I look in the rear view and I had a syringe behind my ear. So yeah, that's the type of individual I was. So yeah, I got a lot of judgment, because I just did not fit into that mold. So that's kind of why I drifted off into that direction and finding some comfort with it. Certainly the interactions that we have with our participants, none of us are out to try to make or try to provide normalcy to any type of chaotic behaviors. If you're living in chaos, we need to have that conversation. If you are unable to keep up with certain responsibilities that are just part of who you are as an individual, let's talk about how we can bridge that gap, right? Let's talk about how we can get you from a place of chaotic substance use to something a little bit more sustainable. That's those conversations, and that doesn't happen all in one go. Like I like to tell people, when I delivered the first kit that we put out, let's do this. Let me go back to how you access our services.
Right.
You text us an address. That's it. We have a Google Voice number. We do not need a name. We don't need any specifics at all. We're never going to ask for an ID or any of that. We just need an address, and we show up there. So the first delivery order I got was to a gas station, and the person gave me an obviously fake name. So fake, I was just like, that's okay. Like, I get it.
Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah. Like Porsche, Mercedes, I'm like, okay, yeah, for sure. But that third time they make an order, guess what? I'm a little bit closer to their house this time. That fifth and that sixth time, I'm at their house. That seventh and eighth time, I now know their real name. And that 10th, 11th, and 12th, they've learned my backstory, and they're asking me, how did you get clean? How did you stop using? And we build out from there, right? That doesn't happen with one sit down. It has to happen over time. It's consistently showing up and letting them know that I don't care. I do not care. There is not anything that you can do that is going to turn me off of trying to help you. That's it. I'm not going to try to coerce you into anything. And I feel like that's a really good launching pad for us. Yeah, I'm in the weeds now, man. Jeff, I'm sorry. So what question was I trying to answer?
Well, you were kind of walking us through the process of what you live like a day in your life doing this.
So yeah,
you mentioned dropping off kits, but what are the kits?
So we have 3 different types of kits. And I love this part because, like, depending on the audience, it gets fun. So we have 3 types of kits. We have the syringe service kit, which is, a bag of 10 sterile syringes. There is a cooker, tourniquet, alcohol wipes, condoms, Narcan, fentanyl test strip. And then we also have flyers. Like, we are putting out these ones that say, like, hey, do you need food, clothing, shelter, mental health care? Do you need medication-assisted treatment? And it's basically a referral sheet. So we've developed relationships with nonprofits and forward-facing organizations in the area. So, like, if somebody needs any of these services, we can hold their hand through the process of engaging and going through intake. So that's what's in those kits. Then we have a meth smoking kit. Yep, it's a meth pipe. It is a universal mouthpiece, Narcan, fentanyl test strip, condoms. And then we have a crack smoking kit.
I was going to ask about condoms, by the way.
Oh yeah, we got condoms and all. So, like, here's the thing: the Southern United States, and whether Oklahoma is Southern or not, I'm not here for that debate. But over yonder, right on the map, over yonder, there is a syphilis outbreak, and it's so bad that there is a shortage on the medication used to treat it.
Wow.
So we work. Some of our volunteers are actually disease intervention specialists for the state health department, and so they kind of help give us some insight into what these numbers are looking like, and we try to provide any gaps in service. But yeah, so we have the crack and meth smoking kits. And full disclosure, when I started this, I did so because this little communist punk rock chick named Hannah Fields in Tulsa, Oklahoma was doing this work. And she talked about it with so much passion. I didn't have a choice but to do it, And I was like, okay, I got $500. Help me know what do I buy? And she walked through all the list, and then she got to pipes, and I was like, nah, we're not doing pipes. And she said, why not, Drew? And I said, well, I don't want to enable people to, go smoke. I mean, you can get a pipe at any corner too. And she's like, Drew, if you can get somebody to stop injecting a substance and start smoking it, is that not a move in the right direction? And I bought pipes within an hour because it's the truth.
So talk a little bit about that. Why is that a step in the right direction? Just for people who don't, know about this stuff.
So based upon surveys that we give to our participants right now, 78% prefer methamphetamine. That is the number one substance of choice among the population that we serve.
Okay.
Here's what happens when you inject meth, or you go on a binge of any sort with methamphetamine. You become dehydrated. you become malnourished, right? A little bit emaciated. Your vein structure begins to deteriorate, right? So with the quality of methamphetamine that is currently on the market, even so, used to you could do a shot and be up for 8 hours easy, no problem. But now it's like 1 to 2 hours, and you're wanting to take another one. So you're getting more needle sticks, right? With that, and you're dehydrated and you're malnourished, your veins begin to break down. That you are hyper fixated on that syringe registering in a vein and getting that shot. It is straight up just like the only focal point you have. It with that not being able to get it, you get abscesses, you get injuries, you get people with, I mean, huge sores on their arms. It's a horror show. If I can get somebody to avoid doing that, right? If I can get you at least trying a different way of intaking the substance, we can move on from there, you know, and it is a step in the right direction. And a lot of this, so here's the thing about harm reduction as a whole. This was a practice created for drug users and by drug users. It isn't supposed to make sense to the vast majority of people. And that's okay, you know. It's perfectly acceptable in my mind for anybody to not be okay with this. But the one thing I tell people is like, A, there is nuance to this. There's a reason. Sure. And then B, I don't need your approval. I just need you to stay out of my way. That's it.
Right.
You know? That's it. Don't put laws that are going to be a barrier to me providing these services. I don't need your money. I will figure it out. I will find it somehow, you know? Anyway, yeah, that's a whole nother thing, you know. Truth be told, to be right in the middle of a very conservative state like Oklahoma, we have not been up against too much. We've found a lot of support. And I think the Senate Bill 511 that I was telling you about, that was authored by a Republican. That was
I was shocked when you mentioned that legislation in a red state like Oklahoma that they were even letting you do it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it shocks me, you know, even but I think with the overdose rates looking like they have ever since, two things occurred, right? One was the prescription. Doctors got kneecapped on what they could prescribe opiate wise. So you stop seeing things like Loratab and Oxycontin and Roxy legitimate show up in the marketplace, the illicit marketplace, right? And then on top of that, you had the pandemic occur. And then that just seemed like with the lockdowns and this and that, people really got in a weird headspace. And those overdose rates just skyrocketed through the roof. I mean, we're talking like national just records in every single state. So when you get to that point, I think a lot of people are more open to figuring out, what do we do? You know, we don't just have former drug users who volunteer with us. Hell, we got somebody who, and I love this man. His name is Darren. Darren had a son, Andrew, who passed away from a fentanyl overdose 3 years ago. Andrew was in the service industry. He was a bartender and a server, you know. So what Darren does is he takes our flyers, Narcan, and fentanyl test strips to local dive bars, and he does outreach that way on our behalf. So like you see a gathering of the community as a whole, you know, like every facet of every lived experience is right there. And it's just like, this is something that makes sense. This is something that is going to work, and it has worked, you know?
And are you looking for more volunteers? Has it been hard to find people, and do you have some kind of screening process you use before you allow those people to help you?
So, yes, we've been really fortunate I was fortunate out the gate to have found a couple of like insane people like me, right? That were just gave up all of their free time to make sure that this worked. Last year, there was 4 of us drivers, and that's it. And we were running 6 days a week. After our full-time jobs, we would get on the road and start driving. I would drive 100 miles a night, delivering kits, come home, the amount of kits that I gave out is the amount of kits I would build to replenish and do it again the next day. All of those people are still with me, thank God. But we now have 14 drivers, and
Wow.
we have it. Yeah, it's great. And we have it broken down to we only deliver 3 nights a week. And a lot of people just have one night that they'll deliver. So they're not really getting burnout. As far as the vetting process goes, we've got every 2 weeks we build kits, and we do that here in this office, not in here. This is way too small. We got a conference room over there that's really nice for that. But we build like 1,000 kits at a time. It's just a big assembly line. And I mean, we've got college students, we've got people from the Oklahoma Libertarian Party, we've got people from the Democrat Party. We have people from every walk of life congregating and getting along and just enjoying some community and fellowship. And that's kind of that jumping off point. I want to get a read on you before I put you in front of our participants, right? Sure. I mean, I'm paranoid as hell when it comes to like anything narcotics related, especially with law enforcement. I would never be able to live with myself if something were to happen, so we definitely do our due diligence on that. But so far, so good.
On a soft note, speaking of law enforcement, your neighbor state, Arkansas, their sheriff in Hot Springs County was allegedly doing meth. And he was going to a dealer's house, but how he got in trouble was that place he was going to was being watched by the feds. So have you had any police officers as customers yet?
I love every bit of that. I love that. That is just
like the best. I have like a list of questions, and none of them were that good.
That is just fire. I would say it's a very strong probability. The funny thing is so like, I think it was about 3 months in, I had, so like I told you how to make an order. It's very anonymous, somebody gave me an address. I showed up, and I never do this, but I did this night. I waited, and they were like, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh, so I waited and they finally showed up, and they came up to my window, and instantly I'm like, this is a cop. This is an undercover, no doubt. And sure enough, he was like, hey, yeah, man, because I always ask, do you want shorts or longs? Because we have a shorts needle on our syringes, and then we have a longer one. And it's all about preference, And he said, no, I don't need that. I just need the dope. And I said, what dope? And he said, the 10 points of dope you're giving out in every kit. And I said, yeah, man, we don't do that here. I said, we got 10 points, and it's like a syringe, 10 syringes. And he was like, no. Somebody told me it was dope. And I'm like, you got lied to, my guy.
Yeah. Or you just made it up.
Yeah.
Made it up.
I'm like, here's the deal, man. I know that you're not, a drug user. You're in all probability a cop. So I'm going to give you this Narcan for the next time you have a panic attack. And we're just going to walk on down the way, have a good evening. And that's the only time that I've been messed with, thankfully. I think that for the most part, we stay out of their way, and they're staying out of ours,
So let me ask you this, because here's something that I was thinking of. I mean, obviously, the war on drugs is still a thing, and what you're doing isn't run without a law. But what about concerns about it? Like, they follow one of your drivers who delivers one of these kits, and then the cops go and bust the person who receives it. I mean, I don't know if it actually happens, but it seems like it could.
No, and that's something we look out for. So in our we have a driver training, right? So before you ever get to deliver a kit, you're going to sit through this driver training. It's a couple hours. Mm-hmm. And it's just basically all of us who've been doing this for a while talking about what we've learned along the way, what to look out for. And that's one of the things that we really hammer home, is to be mindful of your surroundings. Not just for that, like obviously law enforcement following you is a thing, but also our participants live next door to people who don't know what they do a lot of times. So we're always mindful of what that looks like. In the event that we are getting followed, like a rule that we have is, if you're getting followed by a police officer, you pull over and you force the confrontation. You force them to approach your vehicle and tell you what they want. Do not lead them to the participant's house at all. Bottom line, we are not doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I want to get into what everybody's going to be thinking when they're watching this. I want to get into the arguments against it. Some of them I used to have. So most people prefer like the abstinence model, and they say that harm reduction just enables people to keep doing drugs. It makes the problem worse. You alluded to that earlier with the needle versus the pipe. How do you respond to that objection that you're just enabling more drug use and more addiction, yada, yada, yada?
So there's two things. First off, the only thing I enable is for people to live. That's it. I enable somebody to continue to live. A dead person cannot recover. Okay. Actually, I'm going to say three things. So that's number one. Number two is, in all of recorded human history, substance use has been a prominent part of it in every society, every civilization. What has not been a prominent part is the abstinence model. That is relatively new. Stigma, shame, and prohibition are things that have not been widespread tried up until here recently. So we have gotten so narcissistic as a society that we think, oh, we can label this thing government and it can change human nature. Not the case at all. Humans are going to continue to try to alter their mood and mind and consciousness. That's just the way it is. We have gotten so absolutely full of ourselves, delusions of grandeur, to think that we can change that. And then the last and final thing that I would say is a story. So as I said, in order for you to make an order, you just give us an address. I will always look on Google Maps and make sure it's not a school, a church, or a government building of some sort. And as long as it's not one of those three things, we show up. So we show up, we make the delivery. This is a Monday evening, okay? Routes are done at about 7:30 that night. 9 o'clock, I get a text from a number, and it said, listen, this address you delivered to was a sober house. Just letting you know, I have confiscated the kit. If you ever come back here again, I'm calling the law. I responded with some choice words, but ultimately I said, you know what? We don't want to create a problem, but have yourself a day. We catch word that the person we delivered that kit to overdosed and died in that house the very next day.
Wow.
That sober house manager confiscated the Narcan and removed it from the property entirely. Every single person that was living there had the opportunity to save this person. They still had the opportunity. There wasn't Narcan in the house to do so. So whenever it comes to this idea, this mentality that the abstinence model, yeah, in a perfect world, for sure, we applaud abstinence. We celebrate it everywhere that it occurs. However, we live in an age where there is no longer any safe supply. You can look at the drug overdose rates, and when it comes to prescribed opioid overdoses, that thing falls like it's just a nosedive since those regulations hit. But guess what? Fentanyl has replaced it 1,000-fold. We are seeing record numbers of opioid deaths. It didn't just replace it, it went past it. So when you talk about people who, even if they were fentanyl users prior to abstinence, after a period of time, when they go back and they relapse, they're going to think that their tolerance is at the same place that it used to be, and it's not. So
you know what, Drew? You said that I was thinking when you brought up that last house and how basically it's kind of like their fault that that person died. Are they being convicted of murder or manslaughter?
I wish something would happen. As an anarchist, it's kind of hard for me to sit there and whatever, because I mean, at the end of the day, that was their house. They had rules,
Yeah.
I'm torn. I did, through a weird stroke of luck, get a sit down with that sober house manager.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And we about went to blows over that deal. They were just, and I know the type, old school Alcoholics Anonymous, hard nosed, this is the only way to recover. And it's not the same game anymore. It's different.
My other thing too is picking off the question and how you responded. I mean, how long has this been going on? How can people have the argument like this isn't going to work if you have no studies showing it doesn't work? It's just their opinion or the emotions that question comes from, in my opinion, when that happens. So how have you guys been keeping documents and a study together to show your progress and show that this is working?
So we, as I said, Oklahoma City is so big, right? And we definitely keep track of demographic information. We keep track of overdose reversals. We keep track of positive outcomes wherever we can find them. It's very difficult to do without like a HIPAA compliant storage for records. So like we don't keep records of people at all. Like you will not find any name of our participants anywhere in the conversations that we've had with them. So that makes it a little bit difficult to track like really nuanced data, but our overdose numbers, which last check is like 1,250 overdose reversals since July of 2022. All of those are self-reported. That's not like a formula we came up with. Like that's 1,250 people saying, hey, I reversed somebody's overdose last night with the Narcan you gave me, right? So that is something that we carry. The other thing that we carry too is that we're really trying to hone in on the zip codes where we deliver the most, where we have truly saturated the market or, communities. And we're going to start pulling data from there. What's the rates of like injury or intravenous drug use injury hospitalizations? What's the rates of hepatitis C and HIV transmissions? Seeing if we can't see a little bit of a dip. We've got, like I said, 2.5 years pretty much to figure this out. One of the ideas that we have is to maybe find a smaller municipality somewhere and really get with the other harm reduction organizations in the state and pull our resources together and just hammer it there.
Just like focus on one concentrated area. Yeah.
And make that be the proving ground for data. All of this is just still in the initial talking phases, dude, we're all people. We don't know what the hell we're doing. Like Jeff, I was driving a concrete truck 3 years ago. Like, what is this? Like I'm now doing Excel spreadsheets and getting an Outlook. Like it's wild to me. But we're trying our best to figure out what does the suit at the Capitol need to hear to not put me in prison for doing what we do. That's it. And yeah.
So here's another one I'll throw at you, because here's one that I've seen a lot, and I've read news reports about it. And actually, there was one op-ed that came out, and I can't remember the publication, talking about Oregon, Portland, and San Francisco. Big problems. They have the needle giveaway program. They have certain areas where people can shoot up, and that's supposedly contributing to crime and just enabling drug use. So what would you do? How would you respond to people bringing up those cities, Portland and San Francisco, that seem to be negative examples of these things, although they're not? You can educate me on that. But how would you respond to that?
For me, it's both of those. It's not just a harm reduction thing, right? So these programs certainly do exist. And certainly there's some unsightly things that come along with that. But it's all the other failures of the system that's in place. So like you have to have a mechanism for the victim to get compensation for anything that happened to them, right? So if you're a person who intravenously injects drugs and you leave a syringe, you use syringe on a playground, you're the a-hole. I love you and I want to help you, but that's not anything that we would tolerate. That's not anything that's okay or acceptable. And if you're caught doing so and somebody gets injured, that person needs to be able to get compensated from you in some way, shape, or form. When we talk about property crime and this and that in San Francisco and Portland, the failure is that you got district attorneys that see this person definitely hurt somebody else. This person made a victim, and they're not charging them for whatever reason. There's arguments to be made like about how one-sided that has been for a lot of years. You know, certainly in a certain socioeconomic class, you were getting nailed by the district attorney. You were getting years and years in prison for a very petty offense. Now it's like they're trying to overcompensate by going the other way. And it's like, I don't know the answer there at all. I do know that like the cultural shift that needs to occur within the drug use community starts with the harm reduction worker. So if you have somebody who is just, you know, very flying in the face of the status quo and just being edgy for the sake of being edgy, there's a good chance that they're not like really instilling the importance of, hey, responsible disposal is very important. Pick up after yourself. Don't be shooting dope next to the daycare center, please. You know, like be mindful. That starts with us, you know, and that's one of the things that I like to pride ourselves on here in Oklahoma City is that we do have those conversations. We talk about, hey, this is the talk that I had with the mayor over here in this municipality. Here's the problem they have with drug users as a whole. Okay. So if you're displaying these characteristics, you're making our job harder. So let's change some things up, guys. We got to work together here. You know, that would be my argument, right? I don't know how you fix that. I know that for us, we also have a a form on our website that if you live in an area and you see syringes littering like a playground or something like that, you can fill out that form and we'll show up and clean it up free of charge. No questions asked. So we're trying to be ahead of that. We're trying to be on the leading edge of how can we benefit everybody, not just the few that we deliver kits to.
Yeah, but I mean, I've never really heard of those issues outside of San Francisco and Portland, maybe a few others. But I haven't heard about anything in Oklahoma City. I mean, because I guess the reasoning is that if you have law enforcement that is arresting people who are actually hurting other people, leaving syringes around so that kids can get them, stuff like that, then that kind of takes care of a lot of it. Whereas in San Francisco and Portland, you like you said, you have the AA school, let that stuff slide.
Yeah, and it's a problem. You know, like I don't think that prison solves anything. Certainly not. The criminal justice system that we have right now is so far removed from anything positive. The only thing that it can be used for is putting somebody in timeout. And right. I really only see that as being necessary for somebody who's like extremely violent.
Yeah.
I think that we should do, you know, there should be programs that are offered that can give people a hand up that can, I don't know, dude. Here's the thing. I'm going to start sounding like real. I kind of like, man, the thing is, at the end of the day, I'm straight up like I'm an anarchist. I do not believe these systems need to exist. However, if we're going to have a police force that has like Bearcats that they got from Iraq, you know, and they're rolling it up and down Main Street, maybe we have some programs in place that teach people how to be responsible humans without stigmatizing them and without throwing them in a concrete cage for multiple decades at a time. I think that would benefit us greatly in our society. The fact of the matter is, decades ago, we were sitting at like 300,000 people incarcerated nationwide. Now we're at like 2.3 million.
Number one in the whole world.
Yeah. The driving force behind that is substance use, illicit narcotics. There is great programs that I've found across the country that are working to right those wrongs. One of them is in Pennsylvania, and they're called Second Chance. That gentleman's name is Christopher Dreisbeck. Awesome dude. What they do is when a police officer is responding to a call, let's say it's shoplifting, and it's obvious that the person they're picking up is on narcotics. Rather than charging that person and putting them in jail, that officer calls a member of the local recovery community to come out and sit with this person. And they have a conversation and they say, listen, you got two options. We can charge you and you go to jail and you go through the court system, or I throw these drugs out. I forget this even happened. And you go with this person to treatment right now. And there's an opportunity for that person to skirt any kind of charges. Is it perfect? No. Is it what, is ideal in the libertarian anarchist mind frame? Probably not, but it's better than what we got.
It's less bad than the way we've been doing it.
Yes.
And Drew, I have a pamphlet I put out. It's called Vices, Crimes, and the Pursuit of Happiness. And this volume 1. Volume 2 is going to be the war on drugs. I would love to have you be a part of it, because I think the people ourselves and the government should be able to devise the difference between a vice and a crime. A vice is when you harm yourself or your own property. A crime is when you harm someone else or their property. And I feel like our justice system would be a lot better if that was recognized, and we would have so many people locked up and extorted, kidnapped, all this stuff. If it recognized the real definition of a crime is when you harm someone else or their property, and not you and yourself and your own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I would love for you to be a part of it, by the way.
I'm with it. Don't threaten me with a good time. Don't threaten me with a good time. I'll be there.
All right.
And so here's another thing. And you were having a conversation about this on X or Twitter a few days ago about harm reduction and recovery. And from my point of view, I thought they were kind of the same thing, but you kind of helped me understand the differences. But some of you that were responding were making it sound like harm reduction is at odds with recovery. So I would suspect that most people will say I favor recovery because that's getting people off of drugs. But can you kind of walk us through that? Like why choose harm reduction over recovery per se?
I was a 12-step absolutist for a great number of years. And the reason being is because when I first found that Alcoholics Anonymous group that had people in it that could provide me with a whole network of resources. I mean, I walked into a meeting and there was a person over here, they owned a sober house and I needed a bed to stay in. This person over here owned a company and they could get me work and I needed money to pay for the bed at the sober house. This person over here knew how to get me plugged into this mental health facility to get back on my medication. And so sitting in one place, I had experienced a community that I'd never experienced before. And that was the gold standard, or it became that in my mind instantaneously. And so that attraction and that loyalty was really instilled in me early on. After about like 10 years of starting to notice certain things, and especially when medical marijuana got legalized out here in Oklahoma, that's when I started to see some of that stigma that really existed, and it didn't make sense to me. Because like, if the amount of times I heard it's none of my spiritual business when somebody was trying to kind of gossip about somebody else, yet here we are saying what is and what isn't sober, I didn't jive with that. Now, the fact of the matter is, man, a lot of people go to the 12 steps and get saved. I'm only here breathing because of them, straight up. But whenever I started to notice that, we only focus on one number when it comes to attendance, and that's the people who stick around. We barely pay any attention to the people who only came to one meeting and we never saw them again. They get dismissed in the back of your mind as if they never existed. But no, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of those individuals who God knows what's happening to them. So harm reduction to me made the most sense. Harm reduction it's like this. Society, we as a society have drawn a line in the sand. And for decades, we've said, hey, on this side, we have housing, we have food, we have jobs, we have everything you need, right? And you can have it, but you got to get your toe to that line right there. And until you do, sorry about you. We have watched people die in record numbers on that side of the line. For what? For some sense of moral superiority, for some weird litmus purity test, for sobriety and abstinence? No. Harm reduction is the act of crossing that line, meeting that person right where they stand, and staying there with them until they move away from that. Right.
So it sounds like the issues, even though you're very complimentary of recovery, which that works for a lot of people, but it sounds like the issue was that it still reinforced that stigma. And I know that you're all about trying to get rid of that stigma or your organization's name. So to me, I mean, it makes sense, but I think what really got me to come around on harm reduction is the fact that you can't get off of drugs if you're dead. I mean, you can't. I guess you are off drugs, but you're also not alive anymore.
Right.
When you're reducing harm, you're giving people more of an opportunity to eventually deal with their addictions. And when I saw that exchange on Twitter, I was thinking, well, harm reduction to me seems like another form of recovery, because if you talk about your experiences, you eventually get to where you're at the house, you find out their real name, and then you can actually talk to them about how to deal with this addiction and things like that. So you're still helping with the recovery process, but just in a different way that meets people who may not be amenable to the 12-step program. Those don't work for them. But maybe your method works for those people who can't do 12 steps.
And then who wins? Who's the only person that wins if someone dies? It's the government that wants to control people. It's, oh, there's another number. There's another person that died. So they're the only ones who win. So if anyone wants to be controlling someone and controlling their life behavior, the government, obviously, it helps them if people die from this. When you're saving people, it takes away them saying, oh, we have to have more laws. We have to make this more strict because the people are dying. They can't use that anymore if you're saving people.
That's it. And, there's an author of the book, a wonderful book I highly recommend. It's called Undoing Drugs. And it's the history of harm reduction as across its entire timeline. I cannot pronounce her last name because, I'm a caveman, but Maya's the first name. So I got half of it right. But anyway, I was at a conference here locally, and Maya was the keynote speaker. And she was talking about when syringe exchanges came here to the States and took off, how the laws quickly started to pop up to prevent them from occurring, And she said, it was very peculiar. The laws on the books prevented us from looking out for one another. Mm-hmm. And the laws dictated that drug users, our only thing that we could do was die to serve as an example to the rest of society. And that's how it is, right? That's the whole big picture. Whenever it comes to what's recovery or not, Jeff, I'm in agreement. Like, this to me is very much so a form of recovery. The reason that I draw those lines and the distinctions is just due to how it is here at home. Mm-hmm. When you mention recovery, the automatic thing that pops in people's minds is abstinence.
Abstinence, yeah.
But if you and I were talking about recovery and it was up to me to define, that would be any positive change. So instead of injecting, you're smoking now. To me, that's recovery. Instead of using 7 days a week, now you just use on the weekend. That's recovery, right?
It's a step in the right direction.
100%, and I think maybe we'll get there someday, and maybe we won't. I don't know why everything has to be what I see, like, let them have their thing and let me have my thing. And let's just learn how to work with each other. So like this office that you see me sitting in, mm-hmm. This is actually the local detox facilities administrative building. They donated this space to us.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So like we work alongside, elements of the recovery community. We're just also very particular with what that is. I'm sure you saw some of the things that I posted about the participant that we had that got shipped off to California. And then they got booted out when insurance stopped paying, and they made it 48 hours back here at home, and they were dead from an overdose. There is a parasitic entity, kind of like the military industrial complex, but it's now the treatment industrial complex that has taken over this country. And a movement that started in love and compassion. If you look at the roots of AA and NA and all these 12 steps, this was people standing up to the status quo and saying, no, we can recover. We will show you. Mm-hmm. That is gone. That doesn't exist. It is all about dollars, profits, Yeah.
Yeah, we got to have you back on and doing just on that, because I really want to know more about it.
Oh man, a lot there.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. So last question, at least for me, Don might have some others. What do you think really motivates people on an individual level to oppose harm reduction? I know what it was to me, but I want to see, just based on what you've observed being in this world, what are the real reasons why people oppose harm reduction?
It's a knee-jerk reaction based on emotions. And I'm not saying that's invalid either. That's the thing, is that for my detractors, I get pissed. I get really, really mad at people who like are very vocal about harm reduction being a negative thing on society. But I don't have that emotional reaction out of a lack of understanding their perspective. Mm-hmm. It's just frustrating. That's all. Maybe I could say that for sure there was a time in my life where I would have fallen within that perspective as well. But I think that for many, it's looking at it only from their perspective and not looking at it from ours. I think that you can really only truly understand the why by doing a ride along with us, by meeting our participants, by seeing how much they light up, just having somebody that cared about them and didn't try to hustle them or throw them in jail. There's so much more to this than just providing supplies. So if all you have to base your understanding of harm reduction on is a Fox News clip about syringes lining the streets in Portland, Oregon, or on X, we see it all the time. Some, obviously mentally ill person sitting on top of a water fountain naked, bathing in it. And they're like, well, this is harm. No, it's not. That's not a positive outcome for any of us, but it's divide, the game, man, they keep us divided,
Yeah, absolutely. And Drew, I had to learn that too. When I first got into this, there's things I was ignorant about and I thought I knew what I was talking about. And I commit when I was wrong, but I had to remember where I was at when I started, And so when I started learning and stuff, at first I was very impatient with these people. I was called a firecracker. I mean, they called me Doni The Don for a reason. So I had to start being really patient on meeting people where they're at and educating them, because just getting angry with them is going to cut the whole entire conversation off. For me, I had to do a lot of self-fixing and thinking and dialogue in my head on how can I improve this. My last question to you is, how have you worked that out on your side of things?
So I think for me, it's like knowing where I came from and understanding the zeitgeist of the culture at large in Oklahoma, it's provided me some ability to kind of make some identification out the gate. So like whenever I'm doing a presentation, which we get asked to do quite a bit, mm-hmm. and we get asked to do some like weird spots. So like I did like a senior living facility.
I was not expecting that.
Neither was I. I promise you that. And as a matter of fact, I didn't know it was a senior living facility until I arrived there. Yeah. So the whole thing. But whenever we get into that, I know there is something that we do that you're going to agree with. No matter who you are, where you come from, something we do you're okay with. Certainly something we do you're not okay with. We're just going to leave that for another day. Let's build on that commonality. So everybody loves Narcan. They understand fentanyl is really bad.
Yeah.
Right? So Narcan, fentanyl test strips.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the condoms. Let's talk about access to other services like mental health care, treatment if they need it. We can really start developing a dialogue. And I think that as long as we can do that, then we can build outward. Now, when it comes to somebody who I didn't get that opportunity to present and they just have that mentality, the offer stays the same as it is with anybody else. I understand where you're coming from. Come do a ride along. Come do a ride along with me. Come meet our people. And then maybe let's have some coffee. And nobody ever takes me up on that, and it sucks. I'm waiting for that day, because here's the like, we got a confidentiality waiver. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna make you sign that first. You know, I'm not too worried about you, but I want you to see our people. You know, I want you to see what this is. It's not what you think it is. You know, but I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay. All right.
And I want to do a ride along too.
Come on with it.
I would love to.
Yeah. Anytime.
And see, for me, it was like when I asked that question, what your answer was basically why I posed it in the past. It was emotional. I didn't know much about it. I heard about all those stories in San Francisco and Portland, and I was still open to it, even though I opposed it. But I'm like, because the thing is, the way we're doing it right now doesn't work. I mean, just locking people up, you know, and I have like a very emotional reaction to drugs, because I've had family members who have gotten strung out, had their lives from died because of it. And you know, I don't think that drug addiction is a good thing, but to me, it takes thinking rational. What if I don't like drug addiction? If I don't want people ruining their lives, what's the best way to stop that from happening? Obviously, it's not the government. Obviously, it's not the war on drugs. To me, like even with these programs, even when I was hesitant about them, I was like, but there might be something there that works. I mean, even though I agree with it, even hearing you talk about handing out kits with meth pipes and crack pipes, in my heart, I'm like, oh, but that's the emotional response. When I think about it, I'm like, that makes sense. Keep them alive, reduce the harm. That way, you can get them to a place where they can get off of drugs. And to me, even hearing you talk about the differences between the 12-step programs and harm reduction, I already know 12-step programs, fine. A lot of people get saved from those. You said you did, but a lot don't. What about the people that those programs don't work for? There has to be something for them. That's where you come in. That's where you save more lives. That's what I love about this.
Yeah, that's that. It's the net, right? And here's the thing. We're not just catching the people that like maybe didn't like the 12-step programs. There is such a basis of shame. It's a ritual of shame. So like, I know this all too well. I got enough of them 24-hour chips. I could tile a bathroom, dude. Like, for real. Funny story. And I'm not going to hold you hostage. I promise. I'm sorry. But
go ahead.
This is funny. So there was my favorite meeting I ever went to was at a men's halfway house, and it was the Serenity House. And they, every Thursday night they had a meeting, and they would give out chips at the beginning. And 24-hour chip every single freaking week, dude. I'm getting another one because like, I'm going to get it this week. But I had gotten so many, they called me one day and said, hey man, money's a little tight. Is there any way you could bring some of those chips back? So like, I had no shame, you know, like none whatsoever. And then you'll see like just the way that I talk. I'm sure you've picked up on that. But there's a lot of people who aren't that way. And if you say, listen, the only way you're going to get this is if you get up for the millionth time in front of everybody and admit you're wrong and, you know, wear your shame on your sleeve. I do not think that is a positive thing, man. I do not think it is. You know, if you kept abstinent for 4 years, you know, and you slipped up over a weekend, you don't need to come back and beat yourself up. You don't need to do that, dude. Get back in the fight. That's all you need to do, right? Yeah. You're here with us. Let's just be responsible. Let's look out for each other and be good humans. That's where I'm at odds with it. Respect. Do not want to change them. What they do is what they do, and it works for them. But you're absolutely right. We need to be catching more people who fall off the wagon, right? Or never even make it to the wagon. Like, let's see what we can't do to help them.
Awesome. Well, before we close, Donnie, do you have anything else to add?
I just want to thank you, Drew, for coming on and sharing this information. I think a lot of people need to learn this stuff and be educated on it. I told Jeff, I know nothing about this stuff. And for me, I've become very much so not very judgmental. I'm more so open to learning. I actually don't have a background where I've lost people or anything from hard drugs or anything. I haven't even seen a lot of hard drugs in my life. And so it's kind of like an out of sight, out of mind thing for me. But when I hear about it, I hear how it's helping people. Like, oh, I want to. How can I be a part of this? So could you let people know, like you said, you have a website, how they can possibly help you or donate to y'all's organization?
Yes, absolutely. So SHRED the Stigma, OK.org is our website. Obviously, we love donations. It's so hard to keep this thing going. Our overhead is about $1,500 every week. That is a far cry from the $500 I raised initially, but yeah, every bit helps. But more than anything, in your area, I promise you, there is somebody doing this work. You can find them by going to NASEN, NASEN.org. That stands for North American Syringe Exchange Network. If you go there, it has a comprehensive list of all the organizations like us doing this work across the country. A lot of these places are grassroots organizations that don't even have paid staff, like it's all volunteers. Chip in, see what you can't do to help them out. If anything else, just ask them if you could come see what it's like. And maybe that can give you that little bit of nuance that's been missing.
I want to add this too. If those who are donating, monthly donations are very helpful, because maybe you might help today and you won't forget about tomorrow. Try to do something monthly, because that helps keep the income rolling in.
100%.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we've got over 100,000 people dying of drug overdoses each year, especially over the past few years. I mean, you look at in the 80s, during the height of the crack epidemic, had quite a few people dying from overdoses. Today, those numbers are more than tripled. Even if you take fentanyl out of it, regular street drugs, no fentanyl, it's still double what it was back in the 80s. So we need a change here. And obviously, we've seen that the war on drugs doesn't do it. Throwing people in cages over drugs does not solve the problem. So let's try something else. And I think that this will do much better going forward. I mean, obviously, there's going to be issues, nothing's perfect, but this seems like a much better way. So before we close out, was there any closing sentiments that you want to share?
Man, that you nailed it right there. I will say, if we could wave a magic wand and get rid of every bit of fentanyl overnight, within a week, there would be something worse and cheaper hitting the market. You're never going to get rid of it, right? The only thing that we can do is try to provide positive outcomes. And the facts are the facts. The data points to anyone who is a participant of a syringe program is 5 times as likely to seek and find treatment. And that's all I got.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, Drew. And we got to get you back on again